Okay, so in this lesson, you're going to be writing equations of lines, and basically, you're going to be given some information, and you're going to be asked to write the equation of a line in both point-slope form and slope-intercept form. So point-slope form and slope-intercept form. So you're going to write equations of lines in point-slope form and slope-intercept form. Okay, now before we do that, let's kind of review something. Suppose you want to graph the line that contains the point -3, -4, and has slope 3 halves. So remember, to graph a line, you need 2 points. I already know one of them, so I'm going to plot that point. So -3, -4 is here. So here's -3, -4. So there's one of my points. And from that point, I'm going to use the slope to plot the other point. So I need 2 points. So my slope here is 3 halves, so rise over run. So rise over run. And my rise is 3, so that means that from this point, I'm going to go up 3, 1, 2, 3, and my run is a positive 2. So I'm going to go up 3, 1, 2, 3, and to the right 2. So there's the other point right here. And so I graph that line like I did before, except before I was using y-intercepts. Now it could be any point on that line. And I get this line. Okay, now what I'm interested in now is what's the equation of this line. I know what the graph looks like, but what's the equation of that line? And so that's what you want to find. You want to find the equation of this line. Okay, so now I'm going to come back to this. We're going to find the equation of the line. So we graph the line. So there's the graph. We're interested in what's the equation of this line. Is it y equals -4x minus 2? Is it y equals -3 halves x plus 4? Things like that. Okay. All right. Now to find the equation of a line, there are going to be basically two things you can look at. The first one is point-slope form, and the other one is slope-intercept form, which you already know about. So slope-intercept form, remember, is y equals mx plus b. Now point-slope form is this. It's y minus y1 equals the slope times x minus x1, where your slope is m and your point is going to be x1, y1. All right, so your slope is m, so hence point-slope form. So your slope is m and your point's x1, y1. So in order to use this form, you have to know the slope and you have to know a point on that line. So again, you must know the slope, and a point on the line. Now, the point on the line, you're going to plug it back into x1, y1. Never plug it back into yx. Leave yx as it is. That's going to be the variables you're going to have in your answer, x and y. So you're going to plug into x1, y1. Okay? All right. So let's go back to this. So now we're going to write the equation of a line. So write the equation of a line. All right, so first of all, you're going to write in point-slope form. So let me go ahead and rewrite it. So my point was -3, -4, and my slope was 3 halves. So this is your x1, this is your y1, and all you do is plug it back in. So we get y minus y1, which is -4, equals the slope, which is 3 halves, times x minus x1, so x minus a -3. All right, so that's what I have so far. All right, now remember the directions you're going to say. Write each line in point-slope form and slope-intercept form. Okay, so so two things. Write in A, point-slope form, and B, slope-intercept form. Okay, now in point-slope form, remember we talked about this before in another situation. Don't leave it as y subtracting -4. You need to know that this is y plus 4. So you can say y plus 4 equals 3 halves, and you need to know that x minus a -3 is x plus 3. And that's your answer in point slope form. This is point slope form. Okay, so that's point slope form. So notice what you did. Given a point and a slope, you just plugged it back into the formula. Plug it back into the formula. In place of x1, y1, you substituted these coordinates. And this was your slope. 3/2 was your slope. And so you just plug it back in. Now what you got to remember though is that you got to simplify this or rewrite this so that way it's mathematically the way we want it to be. So y subtract -4 is y plus 4. X subtract the -3 is x plus 3. And that's point slope form. That's what point slope form looks like. Okay, now the next thing you want to do is get in slope-intercept form. So to get to slope-intercept form, you got to get y by itself. Okay, so to get slope-intercept form, you get y by itself. All right, so here we go. This is the best way to do this. You're going to distribute the 3/2 first. So distribute the 3/2 first. I guess you should have rewritten it over. So that's your answer for point slope form. So I'm going to just go ahead and rewrite this. All right, distribute. So I get y plus 4 equals 3/2 times x is 3/2 x. And then 3/2 times 3. Okay, got to remember, this is 3/2 times 3 over 1. 3/2 times 3. 3 times 3 is 9. 2 times 1 is 2, so that's 9/2 plus 9/2. All right, now you're going to subtract 4 and use your calculator for this part. So to combine like terms, I get y equals 3/2 x, and then just use your calculator. You're going to say 9/2 subtract 4. So 9 divided by 2 subtract 4 is 0.5, and you're going to leave it as a fraction. Don't leave it as a decimal. Don't leave it as a decimal. Leave it as a fraction. So if you don't know that 0.5 or 5/10 is a half, then just do this. See where it says PRB right here? So you go and see the blue part that says F to D, so fractions to decimals, decimals to fractions. You can say second, PRB, and then press equal, and it converts it to a fraction, so 1/2. So that's plus 1/2. All right, and so that's your answer in slope-intercept form. So this is slope-intercept form. Okay, so that's number 1. Okay, so number 2. Let's suppose in number 2, again, what you want to do in each of these is this. You want to write the equation. Write the equation in A, point slope form, and B, slope-intercept form. All right, so once you get in point slope form, to get it to slope-intercept form, you just get y by itself, based on what we just did. All right, so here's number 2. Let's suppose this time the slope is 6, and the point on the line is, and it passes through the point, it'll say passes through the point, and let's say the point is -2,5. All right, so first of all, we're going to remember point slope form. So here's point slope form. Y minus y1 equals the slope times x minus x1. So y minus y1 equals the slope times x minus x1. And so you just plug in. So this is your x1, this is your y1. Always make sure you substitute the coordinates of your point into x1, y1. Don't substitute x and y, because remember, that's what you're trying to get your equation into, y and x, not y1, x1. Okay, y and x. So we're going to get y minus y1, which is 5, equals the slope, which is 6, times x minus x1. All right, now again, don't leave your answer like this. You need to know that x subtracting -2 is x plus 2. So y minus 5 equals 6 times x plus 2. And that's your answer for point slope form. Okay? Now, to get it to slope-intercept form, I'm going to go ahead and rewrite this. So to get to slope-intercept form, we got to get y by itself. So y equals mx plus b. So I'm going to distribute. So I get y minus 5 equals 6x plus 12. And then we're going to add 5 to both sides. Combine like terms, I get y equals, So I get y equals 6x plus 17. And so that's your answer in slope slope-intercept form. So that's the equation of the line in slope-intercept form. So this is the equation of the line in point-slope form. This is the equation of the line in slope-intercept form. So basically, your slope is 6, which we knew. We knew the slope was 6, so notice the 6. And remember the 17, that 17 represents the y-intercept. That's where the graph crosses the y-axis. Okay? All right. Number 3, suppose the slope this time is -3 and passes through, and let's say my point is -2, -3. All right, so first of all, we want to write in point slope form, so we got to use our formula. Y minus y1 equals the slope times x minus x1. So here's your x1, here's your y1. Make sure you label it. And these just plug back in. So y minus y1, which is -3, equals the slope, which is -3, times x minus x1, which is -2. Do not say that's your answer. We expect you to know that y subtract a -3 is y plus 3. We expect you to know that x subtract a -2 is x plus 2. And now, that's your answer for point slope form. Okay? So notice when using point slope form, you need to know the point and a slope. Hence called point slope form. So you know a point on the line, you know the slope of the line, you just plug it back in. So in order to use this formula, you got to know the point and you got to know the slope. All right, now we got to get it in slope-intercept form. And all you do is get y by itself. So I'm going to go ahead and rewrite this. And then to get y by itself, we're going to distribute this. So I get y plus 3 equals -3x, -3 times x, -3x, -3 times 2 is a -6. And then finally subtracting 3 from both sides, we have our answer. Now our answer is going to be y equals -3x and a -9, minus 9. So that's your slope-intercept form, y by itself. So your slope is -3, which we knew was supposed to be -3. And remember, the -9 here represents the y-intercept. That's where the graph crosses the y-axis. All right, number 4. Okay, suppose that the slope is -4 and it passes through the point -4, 0. All right, so slope is -4 and it passes through -4, 0. So remember, first of all, you want to write in point slope form. So use your formula. Y minus y1 equals the slope times x minus x1. So here's x1, here's y1. And you just plug it back in. So again, in order to use this, you got to know a point and a slope, in which you do. So y minus y1, which is 0, equals the slope, which is -4, times x minus x1, which is a -4. Now again, don't leave it like this. Here's why. We expect you to know that y subtract 0 is just y. And then that's going to equal, and then this is going to be -4 times x plus 4. And so that's point slope form. All right, so that's point slope form. All right, now that's not slope-intercept form. Even though you see y by itself, that's not slope-intercept form because I got distribute. So to get it in slope-intercept form, we distribute and we get y equals -4x minus 16. And so that is slope-intercept form. All right, okay, number 5. Let's suppose that the slope is 1/3 and it passes through, let's say -4, 5. -4, 5. Okay, so remember, if you're going to find the equation of a line, you got to put it in point slope form first. So y minus y1 equals the slope times x minus x1. This is your x1, this is your y1, you just plug things back in. So y minus 5, that's your y1, equals the slope, which is 1/3, times x minus a -4. All right, so I expect you to know that x subtract negative 4 is x plus 4, so we get y minus 5 equals 1/3 times x plus 4. So that's the answer for point slope form. Okay, now you got to get it into slope-intercept form. So I'm going to go ahead and rewrite this. And now to get it in slope-intercept form, you're going to distribute first. So you get y minus 5 equals 1/3 x plus, now remember 1/3 times 4 over 1 is 4/3. So that's what this is, plus 4/3. All right, now you can add 5 to both sides, combine like terms. This is 0, so y equals. Now you can combine these two right here. Use your calculator for this. So it'll be 1/3 x plus, okay, using your calculator, you're going to say 4 divided by 3 plus 5. So 4 divided by 3, 4 divided by 3 plus 5 equal, and you get this. Now, many of you probably know that 0.333 repeating is the fraction 1/3. So that's 6 and 1/3. But even if you didn't, use your calculator. So you're going to see this F to D. Press that. So you can say second that. And then press equal. And it gives it to you as a mixed number. So this is a mixed number. So don't write it as a mixed number, though. I need for you to write it as an improper fraction. So remember, 6 1/3 is going to be 6 times 3 is 18 plus 1 is 19. So that's 19/3. And that's what goes here. 19/3. So, so this is slope-intercept form. Remember, the slope is 1/3, which we knew, and the 19/3, which is 6 1/3, represents the y-intercept. That's where the graph crosses the y-axis. All right, number 6. So remember, use your calculator whenever possible. Okay, number 6, suppose we have the slope equals negative 3/5, and it passes through, and let's say passes through the point 15, negative 2. 15, negative 2. Okay, so we have, remember this is x1, y1, so make sure you label it. So we're going to use our formula, y minus y1 equals the slope times x minus x1. And so we plug things back in, so I get y minus a negative 2 equals the slope, which is negative 3/5, times x minus 15. All right, so rewriting this, I get y, this is y plus 2. You got to write like that, equals, and then just rewrite the other side over. And so that is point slope form. Okay, now to get into slope-intercept form, you got to get y by itself. So I'm going to go ahead and rewrite this over. All right, and then we're going to distribute. So I get y plus 2 equals negative 3/5 x. All right, now this is what we have. We got to multiply the negative 3/5 by the negative 15. So negative 3/5 times a negative 15. And remember, that's negative 15 over 1. So first of all, remember that a negative times a negative is a positive. And then when I reduce, 5 into 5 is 1, 5 into 15 is 3, and so I get a negative 3 times a negative 3, which is a positive 9. So that would be plus 9. That's what I get. So this times this is a positive 9. Make sure you get that. And now I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides, and so I get y equals negative 3/5 x plus 7. So that is slope-intercept form. So what you found was that the slope is negative 3/5, which we knew, and that the graph crosses the y-axis at 7. Okay, number 7. Suppose the slope is, let's say the slope is negative 4/5, and it passes, let's do 4/7. Let's do 4/7. And it passes through this point. Let's say the point is 3, negative 1. 3, negative 1. Alright, so this is your x1, y1. Make sure you label as it does help. So y minus y1 equals the slope times x minus x1. So y subtract a negative 1 equals the slope, which is negative 4/7, times x subtract 3. Rewriting this, I get y plus 1, because y subtract negative 1 is y plus 1. equals negative 4/7 times x minus 3. So that is point slope form. Don't leave it like this. You got to leave it like this. All right, and now to get y by itself, that's how you're going to get it to slope-intercept form. So let me go ahead and rewrite this over. Okay, now we can distribute. Use your calculator for one part. So I got y plus 1 equals a negative 4/7 times x is a negative 4/7 x. Okay, now let's figure this next one out. Negative 4/7 times a negative 3. All right, I cannot reduce, so I'm just going to multiply. A negative 4 times a negative 3 is a positive 12. 7 times 1 is 7, so I get 12/7. So that's plus 12/7. That's what that is. And now I'm going to subtract 1 from both sides. So I get y equals, that's a y equals negative 4/7 x. Now let's figure out what this is right here. So 12 divided by 7, subtract 1. 12 divided by 7, subtract 1. 12 divided by 7, subtract 1 equals. And then there's no way you can tell me what fraction this is, so use your calculator. So second, fraction to decimal, press equal, and there's your fraction, 5/7. So that's plus 5/7. And so that is slope-intercept form. Okay, number 8. All right, number 8, suppose that the slope is 3/5 and it passes through the origin. Okay, passes through the origin. Now, one thing you got to remember is this. You got to remember what point represents the origin. The point that represents the origin, remember, that's where the x and y axis intersect. That's this. So that's the point 0, 0. So that's the origin. And so this is your x1, this is your y1. And so you're going to get y minus y1 equals the slope times x minus x1. And so you just plug things back in. So you get y minus 0 equals 3/5 times x minus 0. All right, and well, you know, if you want to leave it like this, there's nothing wrong with leaving like this. Although y minus 0 is y, so so if you want to leave it in point slope form, this technically is point slope form. So I guess you can leave it like that, point slope form. But then you get y by itself for the slope-intercept form. I'm going to go ahead and rewrite it. You're going to say y minus 0 is y equals, and then notice this. X minus 0, that's just x. And so notice, there's your answer. Y equals mx plus b. So that's your slope-intercept form. So notice that your slope is 3/5, which is what we knew. And remember, this looks similar to something in a previous lesson. The y-intercept is plus 0. So 0 is your y-intercept. So if you want to put in slope-intercept form, if you rewrite it like this, there's nothing wrong with that. You can say this, but we prefer this answer. Okay, that answer. All right, number 9. Okay, now listen carefully to this part. Suppose that you want to write the equation line, same directions, point slope form, slope-intercept form, but all you know is that it passes through, and let's say this point, 1, 2, and 5, 10. All right, so what you want to do here, now I don't have enough room, but let's say 5, this is 1, 2 right here, 1, 2, and let's say 5, 10, I'm making this up, so this is 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, so let's say 5 10s here. All right, and what I'm interested in is I have this line that passes through, these 2 points. So I'm going to draw the line going through those 2 points. And I'm interested in the equation of that line. So this is number 9. So I'm interested in the equation of that line. So all I know is that this line contains these 2 points. Whereas before, I was given a slope and a point. Now I'm just given 2 points. Okay? But again, just like before, I've got to use point slope form. Y minus y1 equals the slope times x minus x1. So what you got to remember now is this. Before, in order to use this, I need to know the slope and I need to know a point. Well, the problem is that I don't know the slope. Nowhere in here are you told the slope. But I do know a point. I know a point on the line. In fact, I know both of them. 2 of them, I should say. Not both, because there's an infinite number of points on that line. You can see that. There's an infinite number of points, so it's a bad choice of words. But I know 2 of them. But when I plug it back in, it does not matter which one I use. I can use this one or this one. It does not matter. You'll get the same answer. But the issue is this. The issue is I don't know the slope. So how are you going to find the slope of this line? How are you going to find the slope of this line? Well, you can use a slope formula. So first we have to find the slope. First find slope. As remember, the slope formula is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And so let's call this x1, y1, and then x2, y2. And it's using the slope formula. So I'm going to get 10, y2 subtract y1, so that's 10 subtract 2 over x2, which is 5, subtract 1. And so I get 8 over 4, which is just 2. So my slope is 2. So now I found the slope. So m is 2. Okay, so now I'm able to use the formula. So remember, I couldn't use a formula just yet because I didn't know the slope. So I had to find the slope, and I could use a slope formula because I know 2 points. All right, so if you know 2 points, you use the slope formula, and you got the slope. Okay, so now let's write the equation of the line. So y, now again, it does not matter which one I use. Let's use this one, and then we'll do this one also. You'll see you get the same answer. It does not matter which point you use, which point you substitute in, because both points are in that same line. Does not matter. Y minus y1, which is 2, equals a slope, which is 2, times x minus x1, which is 1. All right, so that's your point slope form. That's point slope form. So now to get y by itself, so I have y minus 2 equals the slope times x minus 1. Distributing, I get y minus 2 equals 2x minus 2. Adding 2 to both sides, combine like terms, I get y equals 2x. So that's your slope-intercept form. Okay? All right, now let's do the same problem, but this time let's use the other point. So now we're going to use, so for this one, I used 1, 2. So let's use the other point. So let's use 5, 10. So this is x1, this is y1. Okay, so I get y minus y1 equals the slope times x minus x1. So y minus y1 this time is 10 equals the slope, remember the slope is 2, times x minus x1, which is 5. All right, so there's your point slope form. So you may say, well, the point slope form and the slope-intercept form look totally different. Yeah, they do, but they're equivalent. You're going to see that. They are equivalent. But they do look different. The points are different. The slopes are the same. So the points are different, but they're equivalent because when you get y by itself, you're going to see you're going to get this. All right, so let's go ahead and get slope-intercept form. So distribute the 2. I get y minus 10 equals 2x minus 10. Adding 10 to both sides. Combine like terms, I get y equals 2x. So notice you get the same thing. So that's your slope-intercept form. So the point here is this. When 2 points are given, you got to first of all find the slope, and then when you plug things back in, it does not matter which point you use. It does not matter. You can use the first point or the second point. It does not matter, but whichever one you use, you're going to substitute it into x1 and y1. Okay? Never substitute x and y. That's wrong. You substitute into x1, y1. All right, let's look at another one. Okay, this is number 10. Okay, let's suppose it passes through And let's suppose it passes through the point negative 3, 0, and 0, 3. So negative 3, 0, and 0, 3. So again, I got to use this point slope form. Y minus y1 equals a slope times x minus x1. It helps to rewrite all the time, so that way you can remember it. So in order to use this, though, I got to know a point on the line, which I do. I know 2 of them. There are an infinite number of them. And I just got to find the slope. So I'm going to find the slope given 2 points. So the slope is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So let's figure out what it is. So let's call this x1, y1, x2, y2. So I get y2, which is 3, subtract y1, which is 0, divided by, since I started with y2, I got to start with x2, so that's 0, subtract a negative 3. So I get 3 over, and then 0 subtract negative 3 is 3, so I just get 1. So your slope is 1. Now, when you plug it back in, it does not matter which one of these you use. It does not matter. I'm just going to go ahead and use the first one. So I get y minus y1, which is 0, equals the slope, which is 1, times x minus a negative 3. Rewriting this x minus a negative 3, I get y minus 0 equals 1 times x plus 3. So let's say this is your, this will be your point slope form. All right. Now, to get it to slope-intercept form, we'll go ahead and rewrite this. So you get your y by itself, and then you're going to distribute the 1 here. So this is just y, and when I distribute, I get x plus 3. And so there's your slope-intercept form. All right, number 11. Suppose it passes through, let's say it passes through negative 2, 5, and negative 4, negative 1. So negative 2, 5, and negative 4, negative 1. So you want to first use this equation, y minus y1 equals the slope times x minus x1. So that's your point slope form. So you can plug things into this. So remember, in order to use this, you got to know the slope and a point. I know a point. In fact, I know 2 of them. It does not matter which one I use for x1, y1, but I got to find the slope. I don't know the slope, but I know that I can find the slope because I have 2 points. So I can use the point slope formula. The slope formula. y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So let's say this is your x1, y1, this is your x2, y2. And you split things back in. So y2 is negative 1. You're going to subtract y1, which is 5, divided by, and then since I started with y2, I got to start with x2. So negative 4, subtract a negative 2. So what I have is this. I have a negative 1 and negative 5 is a negative 6. I have a negative 4, subtract a negative 2 is negative 4 plus 2. So that's negative 6 divided by negative 2, which is 3. So my slope is 3. Okay, so I get y minus, it does not matter which one of these I use. I'm going to just go ahead and use the first one. It doesn't matter. So you can say y minus y1, which is 5, equals the slope, which we found to be 3, times x minus x1, which is a negative 2. Now don't leave it like this. Rewrite x minus negative 2 as x plus 2. So I get y minus 5 equals 3 times x plus 2. So that's your point slope form. So that's the equation of the line. And so now we're going to distribute. So we got to write in slope-intercept form now. So I can get y by itself. So distribute. I get y minus 5 equals 3x plus 6. Adding 5 to both sides. Combine like terms. I get y equals 3x plus 11. And so that's your slope-intercept form. Okay, so that if you graph this, that will be the equation of this line. So the equation of the line is y equals 3x plus 11. All right, so just kind of remind you that this equation here, the equation of this line, is for number 9. It was y equals 2x. All right, and I think this was number 1. So for number 1, if I can find it, that equation was y equals 3/2 x plus a half. That was that equation. All right. Okay, so let's look at number 12. Okay, number 12, you have, let's say passes through, this line passes through these 2 points. Let's say the 2 points are 3, 4, and -1, -6. So 3, 4, and -1, -6. Okay, so remember you got to use your point slope formula. So my point slope formula is y minus y1 equals a slope times x minus x1. All right, so in order to use this point slope formula, I got to know a point on the line, which I do. I know 2 of them, so it does not matter which one I use. This could be x1, y1, or this could be x1, y1. Does not matter. And I got to find the slope, though. I don't know the slope, so I'm going to use the slope formula with these 2 points to find the slope. The slope is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So let's go ahead and label these. So let's say this is x1, y1. This is x2, y2. Just plug in. So y2 minus y1, so y2 is -6. Subtract, remember subtract, y1, which is 4, divided by, now since I started with y2, I got to start with x2. So x2 is a -1. Subtract x1, which is 3. And so a -6 and a -4 is a -10. A -1 and a -3 is a -4. Reducing this, a negative divided by negative is a positive. 10 fourths reduced, they're both divisible by 2. So that's 5 halves. So my slope is 5 halves. Okay, so I'm going to plug things back in. Let's this time use this as my point. So I'm going to get y subtract, okay, so now remember this is going to be y1, x1 now. So y subtract a -6 equals the slope, which is 5 halves, times x subtract a -1. Now rewriting this, this becomes y plus 6 equals 5 halves times x plus 1. So that's your point slope form. All right, that's point slope form. So you got to rewrite y subtract -6 as y plus 6. Okay, now to get it in slope-intercept form now, you're going to distribute the 5 halves. So let me go ahead and rewrite this. All right, and then distribute. I get y plus 6 equals 5 halves x. Now this part's easy because 5 halves times 1 is a positive 5 halves. Now the next step is to subtract 6. Now use your calculator on that part. So I'm going to get y equals 5 halves x. Now let's figure out what this is. So on your calculator, you're going to say 5 halves, subtract 6. So 5 divided by 2, subtract 6, gives us this. So -3.5. Now -3.5, that should be easy because that's 5/10, so that's -3.5 as a mixed number, and you can always convert it back to an improper fraction. But if you did not see that that was -3.5, then say second fraction to decimal or decimal to fraction, press equal, and you get -3.5. So you get this mixed number, -3.5. You just got to rewrite this as an improper fraction. So that's going to be a negative. 3 times 2 is 6. 6 plus 1 is 7. So it's a -7 halves. So minus 7 halves. So that is slope-intercept form. So that's the equation of this line, of the line that goes to these 2 points. Okay? All right, let's do one more with this. So let's suppose we had this. Passes through. And let's say passes through -2, -5, and 3, -1. So -2, -5, and 3, -1. Okay, so remember we got to use point slope form. So y minus y1 equals a slope times x minus x1. So I know a point on the line, so it does not matter which one of these I use. Into x1, y1 does not matter, but I got to find the slope. So I'm going to find the slope of this line using the slope formula. So slope is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So here's your x1, here's your y1. Make sure you label it, it does help. And here's your x2, y2. So you just plug back in. So y2 is -1, subtract y1, which is a -5, divided by, and then x2, which is 3, subtract x1, which is -2. All right, now, if you don't know what this is from a previous course, then use your calculator. But this is going to be Negative 1 subtract negative 5 is really negative 1 plus 5. And then 3 subtract negative 2 is really 3 plus 2. So negative 1 plus 5 is 4. 3 plus 2 is 5. So you get 4/5. So that's your slope. So now let's plug back in. So I'm going to go ahead and use this one as our point. So I get y minus y1, which is, remember this is y1, x1 now, which is negative 1, equals the slope, which is 4/5, times x minus x1, which is 3. Rewriting it, I get y plus 1 equals 4/5 times x minus 3. So there's your point-slope form. Okay, now we got to get y by itself. So I'm going to go ahead and rewrite this. All right, and then we'll distribute. Okay, so here's what we got. We distribute. We get y plus 1 equals 4/5 x. Now we got to figure out what 4/5 times this negative 3 is, times a negative 3. Now remember, that's negative 3 over 1. I can't reduce, so that's going to be 4 times a negative 3 is a negative 12. 5 times 1 is 5, so that's what I get. So that's 4/5 x minus 12/5. Now I've got to subtract 1 from both sides, so I get y equals 4/5 x. Now let's figure out what this is. Now be careful, that's a negative 12/5, not 12/5, but a negative 12/5. So, so your negative is right here. See this right here? So you're going to say, see how it puts the negative there? So negative 12 divided by 5, 12/5, negative 12/5. Subtract, here's the subtract button right here, 1. So you see negative 12/5, subtract 1, equal, and you get this, negative 3 4/10. Converting that to a mixed number, I get negative 3 2/5. So this right here that has circled, is negative 3 2/5. Now just got to convert that back to an improper fraction. So it's going to be a negative, let's see, 5 times 3 is 15, plus 2 is 17. So negative 17/5. And so that's what goes here. So this right here is your answer. So that's your slope-intercept form. All right. Okay, now let's look at this one, 14. Okay, let's suppose it passes through. Let's suppose it passes through the point negative 6, 4, and the x-intercept is 5. The x-intercept is 5. Okay, so it passes through negative 6, 4, and the x-intercept is 5. So remember, x-intercept means the order. So you got to think of the ordered pair. Remember, we talked about ordered pair. If you had to write as an ordered pair, what would it be? Well, remember, the x-intercept is where the graph crosses the x-axis. So that means that my x-coordinate is 5 and my y-coordinate is 0. Remember that. That's your x-intercept. Remember how to find the x-intercept? We said to find the x-intercept, you let y equal 0. Okay. And so now, remember, we got to use y minus y1 equals a slope times x minus x1. So to use this, I got to know a point in the line, which I do. I know 2 of them, but I'm going to use this one here when I plug in, because that's easy. That's the one that has a 0 in it. It didn't matter. You get the same answer. You'll get the same answer, and I'll do both of them to show you. But we got to find the slope, though. So this is your x1, y1. This is your x2, y2. So your slope will be y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So y2 is 0. Subtract y1, which is 4. Divided by, since I started y2, I got to start with x2. So that's 5. Subtract x1, which is negative 6. So I get negative 4 divided by 11. 5 subtract a negative 6 is 5 plus 6. So that's your slope, negative 4/11. So now I'm going to plug things back in. So I'm going to use this one first. So y subtract the y-coordinate of my point, which is 0, equals the slope, which is negative 4/11, times x minus the x-coordinate of my point. Okay, that's what I get. So there's your point-slope form. Okay, now I'm going to change it back to y-intercept form. So I'm going to go ahead and rewrite this over. That's 11 times x minus 5. Okay, so I get y minus 0 is y equal. I'm distributing this. I get negative 4/11 x. All right, now let's figure out what this part is right here. So I have negative 4/11 times a negative 5, and I can write negative 5 over 1. So a negative times a negative is a positive. 4 times 5 is 20. And then 11 times 1 is 11. So I get plus 20 11s. And you're done because you got y by itself. So that's your slope-intercept form. Okay. Now just to let you know, so your slope is negative 4 11ths, right? And your y-intercept is 20 11ths. As a mixed number, remember what 20 11ths is. So you say 11 to 20. You say 11 to 20. So 11 goes into 20 one time. 1 times 11 is 11 with a remainder of 9. So that is this right here. Your y-intercept as a mixed number is 1 and 9 11ths. That's what you just found. Okay, I want to show you that it didn't matter which one of these you used when you substituted. So remember, for this one, I used this one. Let's do the same thing with this one, though. All right, so remember, here I used 5, 0. All right, now let's use negative 6, 4. Just to show you, you're going to get the same answer for your slope-intercept form. Okay, so I get y minus y1, which is 4, equals the slope, which is negative 4 11ths, times x minus a negative 6. Okay, x minus x1, so negative 6. So you have y minus 4 equals negative 4 11ths times x plus 6. So that's your point slope form. Okay, now we got to get y by itself. So I'm going to go ahead and rewrite this over and then distribute. So I get y minus 4 equals negative 4 11ths x. Now we got to figure out what this part is. So negative 4 11ths times 6, that's 6 over 1. I cannot reduce, so I'm just going to go ahead and multiply. Negative 4 times 6 is negative 24, and 11 times 1 is 11. So I get negative 24 11ths. So minus 24 11. So that's what this is. Now to get y by itself, I'm going to add 4 to both sides. So you add 4 to both sides just like this. And then use your calculator with this part here. I'm going to use a calculator with this. So I get negative 4 11ths x. All right, now on your calculator, remember though, this is negative 24 11, so you got to say negative. So negative, remember your negative buttons right here. So negative 24 divided by 11, and then that's plus 4. So plus 4. Notice, make sure this matches this. And then press equal, and this is what you get. All right, so I don't expect you to know that 0.81 repeating is, what's the fraction? 1/9? I don't expect you to know that, so use your calculator. So second fraction to decimal, decimal to fraction, press equal, and notice you get 1 and 9 11ths. 1 and 9 11ths. So that's plus 1. Oops. So it's 1 and 9 11ths, but go ahead and leave it back as an improper fraction. So 11 times 1 is 11, plus 9 is 19 over 11. 19 over 11, which is what? Oops, sorry, that's 20, excuse me. 11 times 1 is 11, plus 9 is 20. And so that should match this, 20 11ths. That's 20 11. So notice you get the same answer. Regardless of which point you use, you get the same answer. Okay? All right, so that's going to take care of this part. So this part is where you had to write equation of a line, and notice what the steps you went through to write the equation of a line. You first of all found it in point slope form, and then once you found it in point slope form, then you change it to slope intercept form. All right, so make sure you go over these problems. Okay, that's the end of this lesson.